Good afternoon. We're joining you this afternoon at 2:30, not our usual time, but thankfully, Rusty, my guest today, was willing to reschedule since I was down with a migraine on Monday. So I really appreciate your understanding and flexibility and rescheduling with me. So welcome to Her Laundry Unfolded.
I'm here. Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah,
I'm
so
really
glad.
curious as to how you came up with the name Her Laundry Unfolded.
Well, I think kind of funny story. I was actually doing laundry and we fold things, everyone folds things a little bit different, like towels, like I kind of do that rolling, and some people just fold them more like squares. And I was thinking about a podcast name, like I like play on words. And so I was folding laundry and I kept thinking, you know, as I'm folding this in a certain particular way, I kept thinking, this is how we kind of do our lives. We kind of put things into certain aspects so that it looks like a nice package. I thought, well, what if we were to unfold it to kind of reveal like where we started at? So that's kind of, it was a weird way that it came out, but we all have laundry, dirty or clean, whatever. And so I wanted to unfold it and kind of show how we got to that nice, pretty package.
That's great because, it's such a great metaphor for life, too. And it is like there's so many metaphors with laundry, like don't show your dirty laundry in public,
Right.
wear clean panties in case you're in an accident.
Yes.
All those things that we get from our mothers, right?
Yes, that's exactly it. Like I said, we all have backstories. I have not met a successful person that didn't overcome challenges in their life.
I think that's what builds resilience. And so Tom Bilyeu, one of the people that I love watching on YouTube, talks about how him and his wife, Lisa, don't want to have children because they don't think they can let them experience adversity in order to build that resilience muscle.
Wow.
It's an interesting concept. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's really a good point. So makes you think about it. I have a daughter as well that she really isn't planning on having children. She just feels like it's too scary, in this world and to be responsible for another human being. And she's just not in a place in her life where she would feel comfortable taking care of another human. So, that's just part of it. So, well, let's just jump right in. So, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, my name is Rusti Lehay, and I'm pretty proud of my middle initial L for Leanne. It's kind of funny how that happened because I was supposed to be Kimberly Ann, but the woman next door was pregnant at the same time and had a boy a week before me. And my mother said, what do I do now? You can't name child same name because you'll get teased in school. And so my dad hadn't named any of the children and thought it was his turn.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was a fun beginning in life. But we're talking about the resilience that we were just mentioning. I really think a lot of it comes from, for women especially, from our relationship with our mothers and how nobody is born with a perfect pattern for parenting, and we learn so much from where we come from. And so, learning with it was one fantastic ride with my mother, who was a challenge for sure in many ways, but she was born in the Depression era of the dirty 30s in Saskatchewan, where it was a dust bowl where they gathered cow pies for fuel for the stove in winter. They would stack them like firewood. When they were dried, it was her job with her siblings to gather those and put them in the wood house.
Wow. I can't even imagine. I mean,
no,
the day and age we live in and the challenges we don't have to face.
No.
Things that we take for granted.
Yeah, we do. And then I had an English professor that also had a different take on that too, on how she wanted to stop teaching because she couldn't teach anymore to kids that didn't understand the depth of a story where the man had to choose between his 5 children, leaving them home where there wasn't enough firewood for the night, and it was a raging winter, and to get his wife, who was having difficulty with the labor, to a doctor. And the kids didn't realize that because they're born with forced air heat.
Right.
Furnaces that are reliable.
Right.
Houses that are insulated to an R20 or R30 value. And they just didn't understand that this was a life or death situation. They couldn't grasp that in the story that she was teaching in English.
Wow.
And yet the kids that we now have, growing up in this age, have other challenges that, so I think it's the challenges that make us what we are, and we can choose to go one way or the other with the challenges.
I agree. I think that's a great point. And, we can't control other people, but we can certainly control how we react to certain things and how we present ourselves. And I think that says a lot about who people are, as who they put out to the world when they're facing challenges.
Exactly. I mean, Viktor Frankl proved that in his Man's Search for Meaning, that had always been on my list to read for years and years and years. And I finally got to it this last year. And it was just mind-blowing to read that at the same time that I read The Tattooist of Auschwitz. And I was co-reading them, because I read nonfiction in the morning for inspiration when I'm wide awake, and I read fiction at night. Otherwise, I'd never get past a paragraph.
That's a good way to do it, because I think, the nonfiction would kind of like wake you up and you're more alert. We're going to bed. You kind of want to be in that dream state and thinking about what these characters look like and, play the situation out. Yeah. So let's go back to you and some of the challenges and things that you've had to overcome. So, what did life look like before you found your success?
Okay. Well, it's been a journey. There's been several layers of success, because being told that I was too dumb to graduate in grade 9 led to several challenges there, and going to a different school after 11 and a half years in the same one to find a teacher that was willing to teach me and raise my grades so I could graduate. And then not believing in my own and ability to learn until I decided to go back to school in 1990 and going back to university. And then I was waitressing, and I thought, I can always waitress, what am I doing in school type thing. And one night I had the worst waitressing night of my life. Oh my goodness. I had spilled beer down in my billfold and the bills. And somebody had given me $100 bill, and I had given them change. And then at a dark corner of the bar, in a rush, knowing that I had other customers to deal with, I gave that $100 bill as a change to a 20.
Oh no.
And that those people walked out without their desserts, they thought, or without, finishing anything, and they just got out of there quickly. And then I walking around in the back kitchen with 2 plates in my hand and another plate in this hand, I slipped by the garbage can and fell into the garbage can on my armpit. It was so painful. Oh, and I just was in the counselor's office the next day crying. I don't know what to do. I can't be a waitress. I'm a failure at that. And I'm not smart. And she's like, what do you mean you're not smart? I went, I don't even know what. And so here I am from 15 to, in 1990, I was 30. And yes, I turned 60 this year, for people who are quick enough to do the math.
Oh, wow. You look great.
Thank you. And so I'm sitting in her office crying and bawling and sobbing, and in between, her asking questions, she goes, what kind of grades are you getting? And you just, totally off the wall. Right. And she goes, were you getting any 4s? And that was when the university was on a 9 stay 9 system. So 4s were just passing, and 5s were a bit better. And I was offended that she asked me if I was getting any 4s. So this juxtaposition, right? I have this image of myself, and yet I'm offended that she's asking me if I'm getting any 4s. Weird. And then any 5s? Went, no, I'm slightly less offended, or whatever. Any 6? Well, 1, but I don't really like the professor. Right. And 7s, I went, yes. Any 8s? I went, Any 9s? I went, whoa, yeah. And so I started asking myself, what would happen if I did the work? What would happen if I, instead of the night before an essay is due, and I have like 10 textbooks all around me, and I'm using Skittles to keep myself awake, and my cat is playing with them as toys, and I bat her paw and she bats me back, realizing there's a lot of strength in those little legs of a cat. Beating back. And what would happen if I studied ahead of time, if I did the reading, if I actually did the reading, and if I worked on an essay 2-3 weeks in advance, like some of my classmates? And I started doing that. I started not being a last minute person. And I ended up on the dean's list, graduating with honors and distinction in both New Mexico State University, when I went there on exchange, and in the University of Alberta, my home city.
That's cool.
Well, these things that we make meanings out of when we're kids,
Right.
but kids are meaning making machines, and we make meanings out of them, and then they settle in our DNA and our cellular structure, our self-belief system, and they don't go away until we have something that kind of wakes us up.
Yeah.
And I'm forever thankful to that student life counselor.
I bet. Especially after being told, this notion that you were not smart, you weren't going to succeed. And what do you do that is having a figure of somebody you're supposed to look up to is talking down to you? You must have been thinking, well, this person who knows a lot more than I do. And if they're saying I'm not good enough, I must not be good enough.
Right. And so many people struggle with that I'm not enough, and I'm not good enough. I'm not enough. I'm not this, I'm not that. And women are not the only ones that have the corner in that market. I mean, like, men are definitely like, they don't think they're good enough to have a beautiful woman. They and they can be the kindest and handsome, and yet they doubt their own ability to be that man that somebody can love. So
correct. And unlike women, I mean, they're looked down if they show vulnerability. If they express like, I just don't feel good about myself, people laugh at them. That's not fair. Like, they have to be these tough guys all the time that, and that's why there's a mental health crisis with men over 40. I think that's honestly part of it.
It is. Do you know that men have an easier time telling their colleagues and friends that they have AIDS or that they're gay than telling them they're depressed?
Wow.
There's something wrong with that.
Yeah, I don't doubt that one bit, because the suicide rates definitely show that, with men at that age, because we never think about men with, struggling with mental health issues. They're supposed to be the protectors. There's so much pressure put on them for protector, the masculine, boys don't cry, all these different things that we do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, okay. So, what other things have you had to overcome? Because that in itself is a lot.
That was the start of my, starting to look at things that I wanted to do with my life, and then going to New Mexico and on an exchange and being able to double major in women's studies and English was just a blast. The professors that I had there were amazing. Gail Lavender, Debbie Laporte, and Jean Walters. Yeah, they were just amazing professors. They were lovely and great classmates. And then coming back to Alberta, graduating here was just a hoot. My mother was there for the graduation, and then immediately after the graduation, she went in the hospital for breast cancer. I was the only one of her kids to graduate. So this education thing went back, right?
Yeah.
The joke was that, my mother had to leave school in grade 3 to work on the farm, but my father went right through school, and then the joke was through one door and in the other, and in one door and out the other. So there was this educational myth that women in our family didn't go to school. We certainly didn't do better than the men. And so I broke that by graduating at a university. And yeah, it was a fabulous moment. But then I still didn't really find what I wanted to do with my life. The professors woke up my desire to write. Mm-hmm. And then after university, I joined the Stroll of Poets Society, and I started actually showing my writing out in public. And that was probably the real beginning of my journey to what my passion is, to loving working with people and their words, and believing that if you've lived and breathed, you have a story, and I'll help you find it. I'll help you coach it out of you, because somebody out there is waiting for your story.
Right. Well, and I love that you brought up poetry, because last week, the lady I interviewed,
Valerie.
Yeah, Valerie. I mean, she's a poet too. And, so what was that struggle like? Because I also, would share poetry, but it was so hard to share that. So hard. So, can you talk a little bit about like the first time you went to share it and what you felt?
Oh, knees shaking. I would swallow in the middle of a word. And if I actually held my paper, it would be shaking like that. But after, they said that it takes 10 years to practice becoming good at something. And I went, oh, no, 10 years. No, I can't do that. I'm already 36. No way. But, I could see that after 10 years, I think, oh, wow, I'm writing stuff that is good straight out of the box. And so from the first year of that nervousness to around the 8th or 9th year of performing poetry, I actually could go and read something that I wrote that morning instead of like 17 drafts later in a couple months.
Wow.
Even though I really believe with Anne Lamott, which is a great book for writers of any kind of genre, Anne Lamott, Bird by Bird, fabulous book. And she writes that there's no such thing as a finished poem, only abandoned ones.
Oh, yes. I have many of those.
I know many of those. But I started realizing, and I challenged myself one year to write a poem a day, and that was really easy. So then I challenged myself ridiculously to write 4 poems a day. That was a challenge. There were some days I was writing 6 and some days I was writing 2. But here's the trick for people who want to write, or they want to write regularly. They want to challenge the fact that writer's block doesn't have to exist. Is just create that corner of your home that is where you write. And then find out that time that is perfect for you to write. That time that might be morning for me. I'm a morning person. It might be evening for some others. It might be the middle of the night when everybody's sleeping and you have a notebook in the bathroom drawer where you can turn on the light and write. That type of place where just you and you alone will meet you and your words. And then challenge yourself to look throughout the day for ideas and see things twice. With that, Natalie Goldberg says writers see everything twice. And so you look at something and go, oh, that's really a unique way to put an outfit together. I wonder if she can be a character in a story. Or remembering something from your past about how the goslings felt when you had to bring them in from outside because the snowstorm happened too late in spring and the mama goose couldn't keep them warm. And you'd have to tuck them into their wool socks behind the stove with a clothespin on top so they couldn't tumble themselves out and wake up the household in the middle of the night, pooping like crazy because they're cold. So, write about those memories and then bring in the feelings and the images and all the 5 senses, and you're on your way to writing a piece that you can share.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And for myself, obviously, like with the title of my podcast, I love play on words. So I find when I write, I like things almost have a double meaning. If I can find ways to write in a way a little bit abstract, so more than one person can identify and find a different meaning out of it. So and I think sometimes I get maybe too hung up on that when I would write, like, this has to have another meaning. It's like, it doesn't have to, it can just be one thing.
Free yourself up there, Wendy, and that just trust that what comes out of you is going to have that double meaning for other people. It's going to have that double meaning for your audience, because everybody will come to it with a different life experience. And I've often found that in my teaching classes, that somebody will get this out of this and somebody will get this out of this person's piece. And then the person there is sitting there smiling going, I didn't mean either of that. But that is your piece connecting with this person where they're at and this person where they're at.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense. It really does. And I think sometimes I know it's about myself. I can be a control freak with things. And so I've really learned to try and let go. And so I challenged myself last January, not this past one, the one prior before everything went crazy, to write my first book. And at first I'm like, well, I don't know. It's got to be perfect. I have to have this, that, and the other thing. And I just said, you know what? Nope. It's my first book. If it crashes and burns, I have to be able to just say, it's okay. I put the words on the paper and I got it out. And that's what I did.
Good for you. Done is better than perfect.
Right. Absolutely.
Best is enemy of better. Like just, aim for better, aim for done, being done, and get it out there, because somebody is going to connect with it. And wise publishers say there's no such thing as a book that goes to press without some mistakes in it.
Right.
There's something in there. I mean, unless you have 10 proofreaders and, an angel looking over the shoulder of each one of them, pointing, something.
Yeah.
No, that happens.
Yeah. And I did have that happen. I had an editor, and after it went and it was published, I'm like, I found some mistakes. I'm like, well, should I, go back through it and read? I'm like, no, I'm going to leave it. It is what it is. It's how it's supposed to be out in the world. And I just left it. So what are some of the mind shift things that you had to go through to get to where you're at, to, obviously getting to that point of writing and having that confidence to share it with the world, to now obviously coaching and working other people through what they need to go to be successful?
I would say that the biggest mind shift, and that's an excellent question, Wendy, because the biggest mind shift for me was switching from a victimhood mentality to accountability.
Yeah.
And it's really insidious how victimhood can stay and creep in the corners. I mean, even if I was to spill something on my desk right now, I'd be looking, and this is a terrible admission, I'd almost be looking for something to blame, because that's still part there. And this maybe isn't the best example, but things like that can happen where
Mhm.
it just happens, and my mind goes, who's to blame? And so there's this game that we can play with ourselves: victim, persecutor, rescuer. We can play it over a piece of chocolate cake. You know, I want that chocolate cake, and I'm going to have it, and then I'm going to punish myself later for it. I'm going to have to do an extra workout at the gym. So then, I become my own persecutor,
Right.
the victim decision that I made to have that piece of chocolate cake, when really the best decision is to have it without guilt. The next best decision is to have it in your mind. And another great decision, if it doesn't agree with you and it's not something you want to do, is to not have it and not regret it. But to not have it and regret it is a horrible decision too.
Right.
So it's we can play that game around and around with inside ourselves, but we best play it with two other people that each play the role. And so let's look at the social services system. They're the rescuer. And then with families that break down and have issues and have need for outside help or counseling or coaching to learn how to be a different kind of family than maybe what they grew up with and learned,
Right.
that then one of those people becomes the persecutor and one becomes the victim. And in our system, it's often the woman that's the victim and the man that's the persecutor. And you know
Right.
what? The children lose out.
Yeah, absolutely.
The children totally lose in that, because even if parents absolutely love each other, which is one of the things I'm putting in my book, I'm working on a memoir to the sons of angry mothers, because I was angry for a very long time.
Cool.
In
I love
that
the name.
place. Thank
Yeah.
you. And so even if parents absolutely love and adore each other, they still need to get out of the way of their children having a relationship direct with one parent and direct with the other parent, because children need to know and be able to have that relationship with the mother and have that relationship with the father directly with each of them, in order to know who they want to be and who they don't want to be.
I agree. I think that's a wonderful point. And I'm a woman of divorce as well. And so raising my girls,
Yeah.
I made a point not to call out their father's flaws from my eyes. I let them get to know him for who he was, and they have their own individual relationships with him. And he revealed who he was to them in his own time. And I feel that's really important, because who someone is to their child is not always who they are to their partner. We can be better
Absolutely.
people as one or the other.
Absolutely. That's so important. And it just brings me to tears that you say that, because I was not as heroic and as moral as you. I almost destroyed the relationship I had with my son. And I'm
Oh,
happy to report that we are so close now.
that's
He
awesome.
messaged me this morning, get up, see the sunrise.
I love
This
it.
I was excellent, whatever. I said, I'm in a meeting, I can't go look.
Right.
Yeah, so it's awesome. And we tell each other raunchy jokes. We joke about how we've always had a really different relationship. In one relationship that I tried after the marriage fell apart, we're just so different as mother and son that my partner looks into him and says, don't you ever wish you had a real mother? And we said, hell no. And we were so laughing about it that we didn't realize it was kind of an insult.
It's funny though.
It is funny. It is
Yeah.
funny. So, but it took me going back to his dad's about 9 years ago and making an apology to him. And I remember making that apology, pretty much the same apology, like a broken record. Whenever you're in a difficult situation or conversation, sometimes the only way to hold your own is to be a broken record. And for 5 hours, I sat on the deck of the home they shared and apologized to him that I never showed up as who I really was, that I didn't show up as me, and that I totally could see. And he kept arguing that that my family made all the decisions for me, And that's what destroyed our marriage. And I said,
Right.
I can totally see that that's your truth, because I didn't show up. I didn't let you know that I had a different opinion. I didn't let you know that I wanted to make different decisions, because I was always afraid of conflict and running away. And that abandoned you. That
Right.
left you with an empty shell.
Yeah.
And, our marriage might have survived if I had known how to show up, stand up, get in your face, and say, I have a different thought here. And our
Right.
son likes to sum it up this way, that if he had been quieter and you had been louder, things would have been different.
Yeah. Hindsight, that's what it comes down to, even in, like you said, as far as like parenting, how we all handle our children in that situation. I don't look at it as like a moral thing, because we have to go through what we're going through. Some parents are just maybe more angry, and I had a lot to be angry for as well, because he was abusive and stuff, and he didn't take the same role I did as far as like not condemning the other parent. My
Yeah.
girls got plenty from his side, from him, but we all have to go through what we have to go through. And like you said, there are consequences sometimes, but I love how you owned up to your part of it. That maybe you should have spoken up, but on his end of it, maybe he should have been a little quieter. So
Mm-hmm.
it takes two. Even in my situation, I was kind of similar to you, I think,
Mm-hmm.
where I didn't like the conflict either. And so I finally just kind of let him walk all over me,
Mm-hmm.
so I mean, it takes two.
It does take two. It absolutely does take two. And I'm just saying that it brings me to one of my big, strong driving missions in life, is to help people divorce peacefully for the sake of their children, to not deprive fathers of their children because we're angry at them,
Right.
to not drive men to commit suicide on the steps of the courthouse because they're working 3 jobs and still can't afford child support and basic living, because there are good men out there that suffer because we don't know how to deal with our own emotions. We don't know how
Right.
to, not be walked on, because
Right.
that is, and being a victim is, and this is going to be really controversial, being a victim is a bit of a choice.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree.
And we do have to choose to step out of that, because it only takes one of us to change the cycle. When I went to live with my niece after I traveled England for a while and still had my stuff in storage, and then I ended up couch surfing for a few years with family, she said that I want to be able to stay grounded and know who I am, and I can't do that in this marriage alone. And so I said to both her and her husband, I said, I will stay, provided there's one condition, and that if you complain to me about her, I will tell you, what can you do to change? And if you complain to me about your husband, regardless whether you're my niece or not, I will tell you, what can you do to change? Because if one of us changes, the other one can't stay the same. And so in a marriage relationship, how that might look is there's choices. When one is changing and growing, the other one has a choice to try change back maneuvers, which often happens in abusive situations where there's a power over, power under.
Right.
Then they can choose to grow with them, which is ideally the best way, or they can choose to leave.
Yes.
And that is what my sister calls leaving without leaving. When you want to leave a relationship, you want to know that you've given it your best shot so that you don't have guilt or regret later. You want to know that you've done all that you can. And when you leave without leaving, then that will most of the time set you up to not repeat that. Because until we learn our lessons, we tend to ask the universe to give us the lesson again and again and again.
Yes. And I think that's part of that victim mindset.
Mm-hmm.
We're expecting things to happen to us instead of for us, and learn from and grow. Yeah, it just makes so much sense, making me kind of go back in hindsight of where I was at, because I did that. I thought I did every possible thing before I could leave. What can I do to make this work? We tried counseling. There was, we tried to renew our vows. There was so much. And my family was looking at me like, what are you, crazy? Why would you stay with him? And they turned their backs on me for a little while, because they did not understand
Mm-hmm.
it was my choice. I had to know I gave everything before I left.
Right. And
Yep.
they were in the rescuer role and could not step back
Yeah.
to let you make that journey from victim to accountability, because
Yeah.
we can't. We do a disservice when we try to rescue someone, because then
Yeah.
they're robbed a part of their growth journey.
And I think when people do that to people like I was in my situation, it almost makes you stand firmer in where you're standing instead of moving you further away from that, because we start to make excuses and, it's not that bad, or, on my own, it almost makes you convince yourself to stay where you're at instead of to move forward. I don't think people really understand that.
No, there's a great book that I read too, that was called Too Good to Leave, Too Bad to Stay.
Yeah.
And it's a really good one to help women who are struggling with that, because my mother had this saying that doesn't matter how bad a relationship is, you'll miss it when it's gone. And I think that's because there are some good things. There was that initial choice, that was
Right.
that initial bunch of pheromones that were guiding you down that path. But there's always something good.
Right.
And
And I think anyone, no matter how bad your situation is, you're going to grieve something from that relationship. And for me, it was the family time, because I had lots of stepchildren too. And so, like, on Sundays, we all got together. I made these great big meals. I loved it. And I knew once I walked away from that relationship, that would never be again. And that was probably the hardest thing for me, because I knew I was kind of that glue. I mean, I still get along with all of them, but it was just really hard to walk away from that aspect for me. So I really grieved that.
mm-hmm.
So I think
Yeah.
that's what a lot of women go through. There's something, like you said, there's something good in
Yeah.
everything, because you married that person for a reason. It's not all 100% bad.
Yeah. No.
Hmm. Awesome. So tell us a little bit about some of your successes that you have found.
Okay. That's exciting.
I love hearing this part of it, like where you're at now, and, because everyone's successes mean something different to them.
Well, I've been really stepping into my own, and it took a while to believe that I have talents and skills and services that are valued by other people, and
Mhm.
it took a number of years to cement itself. And I started, like, all of a sudden working with 150 authors in a compilation series that were all from all over the world, largely meeting most of them in Mind Valley University, and then going from there and doing a speaking academy where all these people have these great stories.
Wow.
And then working with them and helping them find their voice and maintain their voice and tell their story and go a little deeper to where their story was on the page. Because if you hold something back, the reader knows. The reader knows that it's not there. And then you lose some of your authenticity. So my role was to help writers get that journey of really dipping into the belly of the whale, coming out into their moment to shine, and the moment where they find their own power. And so it was an awesome journey. And now I have authors from all over the world that refer me to other people.
Wow.
And I take on about 2 or 3 authors a month, and I'm leading stage reads. In fact, I have one coming up next weekend.
Oh, sweet.
So I have 2 writers from England that are working in memoir. And I have a writer that might be dipping in, she's working on fantasy. There's another writer that is working on a fantasy that she claims, she's been in 2 of the other retreats, she's claiming that it's a self-help novel that's hidden in the fantasy, and all the other people that hear little bits of it, she's in another writing group that I run as well. All the people who hear little bits of it will go, would you hurry up and finish? We want to know what's happening. And then I have a poet. I have somebody that's working on nonfiction. I have some how-to about meditation, relaxation. I have somebody writing a book about the dating scene for women over 50 and how you find someone. And she's got a quirky sense of humor. I can't give away her title because it's so good. It's
okay.
so good. But I'll let you know when it gets out.
Yes, please do. So what is the stage treat? So, tell me more about what this is and what does it entail? And
yeah, well, instead of having to travel to a retreat, saving you air miles,
yes,
and safety and keeping you safe, and we meet on the Zoom. And when I worked with those authors in the compilation book, I discovered that what I've been doing for years, teaching writing, can happen in a Zoom room. And it happens so well that people bond and share and feel that collaborative energy of when you're working with other people and you know that other people are writing at the same time. They feel it and they get lots done, and people say, I got so much done, and the feedback that they get. And then I'm also told by my classes and in Zoom that I create this safe place for writers. So I have everybody sign a non-disclosure agreement. What they hear there stays there, so that people's intellectual property is protected. And then we meet on the Friday night to talk about what our writing goals are for the weekend, what we're writing on if some of the people don't know each other, and short writing exercise that night. Saturday morning, I have a special guest. And then there's a longer session of writing where people turn off their mics and their cameras and go write. Then they come back and they share. And then there's a break, a lunch break, which doesn't work out as lunch for people in Australia, New Zealand, and Europe. But it's a break there, so that we are always starting each session at the same time as in my stated schedule, so that people, if they need to just drop in and can't attend the whole weekend, they can drop in as long as their first drop in is at the beginning of a session, so that other people know who they are and you get a chance to introduce yourselves. So there's 2 sessions on Saturday, 2 sessions on Sunday, with lots of feedback, the Facebook group for them, and it's by suggested donation, and Eventbrite link is on my website. So.
That is so cool. I love that. And I can just imagine the cool stories people are sharing and getting feedback on, and how fun that must be to be a part of. That's so neat.
Oh, it's awesome. It jazzes me up. There's nothing that jazzes me up more than people getting in touch with what they want to write, and feeling the excitement of sharing it, because writing is such a solitary thing. I'm sure you know.
Yep.
Doing your own book, it's so solitary, and we have to wait so long to hear that well done. So helping one of the people that I absolutely loved when I was in her classes years ago, is she says to write well done and your name at the end of each piece, because it takes you a long time to get that from other people.
I love that. That's such a neat thing to say. I love it.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, and the thing I think is hearing other people's stories, I think would kind of spark you or inspire you more to keep going. So let's say somebody has that, I guess, writer's block, so to speak, and you hear other people's great ideas and stories. To me, that's just inspiration.
Yes, and I use trigger prompts, and that's where my empathic coaching ability comes in too. Is I'll have about 15 or 16 books littering the floor out around my desk and on my desk, and something will just spark me and go, oh, this is the one that I'll use now. And so one of the ones that I might be using this coming weekend is by Rainer Maria Rilke. It says, human beings are where God understands and learns. And that just blows my mind.
Wow.
It blows my mind, because I'm thinking, what do I have that God's going to learn from inside this shell? What? And so I think that could be a great prompt to take us into what, if we were the teacher and God was the student, what are we teaching?
Wow. That's very thought-provoking.
It is a thought-provoking one, isn't it?
Yeah.
The other one that I like to use too is when we don't heal the wounds, we will bleed on those who didn't cut us.
Oh, I've heard that one. I love that.
I know. That one's a really great one. That one's led to so much writing that I've used in different groups. Yeah.
For me, I found I'm always emotionally charged because I did a lot of songwriting. I have a co-writer in Arizona, and I never did the music part of it. I just the lyrics. So I've always been a lyricist mostly. That's where my poetry goes. But whenever I felt a little bit stuck on writing lyrics of any sort, we did a variety: blues, country, that sort of thing. But where I got my inspiration from was never the music I was writing. So let's say I'm stuck writing a country song or something bluesy. I was always more inspired to listen to like Tori Amos, Fiona Apple, Sarah McLachlan, that sort of music where it really moved me and got me to this emotional place in my head. And so the lyrics that came out were literally the polar opposite of what I listened to, but it got me to that place. So I kind of learned what was going to like trigger me kind of to be able to write or finish whatever I was working on.
That's awesome. And you know what? My sister said that one time, something very similar, Wendy, where that I lead a group for drop-in. Anybody who wants to come in and write at a local cafe, which has been shut down obviously now. And she came away one time with these pieces that everyone loved in the group. And I've used 3 trigger prompts that day. And we're walking back to my place. And she says, I didn't like any of the trigger prompts you used today. I went, but you wrote all this amazing stuff. How could you not like that? And everybody loved what you wrote. And she was, I know. It's like, even though I didn't like it at the beginning, I wrote it down and it led me into what I wanted to write. And it made this perfect segue into what I wanted to write that I never knew that I wanted to write. So trigger prompts, just let them work you. Let them work that part of your brain down your arm into the pen, because there is science that shows that writing by hand gets us more in touch with what wants to come out, with what needs to come out.
Yeah, I think probably 99% of the time writing, it was always by hand. And then I would maybe type it in. But I had to write it out by hand and be done with it before I could type it in. And I'm a very fast writer, though. When I have an idea, especially for a song or like a hook or something or a chorus, I have to like just get it out of me. If I pause or if I rethink it, it's not right. I don't know. So I'm a fast writer that way.
Yeah. Sometimes if you can't write fast enough for what's in here, like the dictating into your voice memo or whatever, or I would have to do that when I ran or when I was on the treadmill or walking, even like record stuff, because I have there are 2 nieces in a story that are tasked by a lawyer to go through their aunt's stuff. And when they were in conversation, their dialogue was so quick, I had to record it. I couldn't keep up. They would talk to me while I was doing cardio, and I couldn't keep up. I couldn't remember what they were saying. I had to record it.
Wow. It makes sense. And I know when you were talking about finding that place where you write the best, I go back to, we're talking probably mid to late 1990s and early 2000s. And my favorite spot was always in my car. I'd be driving somewhere and something would hit me. So I always had like receipts in my purse, and I would forever be trying to like, not safe, of course, but drive and like quick write down this idea, because I didn't have a cell phone at that time. And so I had envelopes and receipts that had lyrics all over them. But when they'd come to me, I'd try and write it down.
Yes, I know. It's like a dust mote. If you don't catch it, it will disappear and go to some other place or whatever too. And I taught people before cell phones that old business cards, on the back of them, they stay firm enough so that you can put them in the palm of your hand and write without the pen going through, and you can trap that. So when I was saying, like, if you want to write all the time, or if you want to challenge yourself to keep your ideas, keep a bag of old business cards in a pocket, a pen in every pocket, every purse, every coat, and then you'll always have something to write on. And now we have our phones, so we can trap all our ideas.
It's crazy how stuff will come to you.
Yeah, start a WhatsApp group with one person, and then take them out of that, telling them that you're going to do that. And then you have your group of just you, where you can put your messages and ideas and things too. And it's really got a great search function too.
Awesome. So you were talking about, your Stay Treat, is that still open for people to register and join?
Yeah, there's a few spots left in that for sure.
Okay, so you go to your website, the rustilehay.ca.
Yeah, rustilehay.ca, and that's where you'll find the Eventbrite link for the event. And there's also a Ask Me for More information there. And on Facebook, I'm Rusty Lee, but on Instagram, I'm Rusty Lehay.
Okay, and so I think I tagged you on my page as Rusty Lee, so I'll share this video again on my page and tag you again, so people can get in connection with you, and they can, like you said, go through your website. This video will be also uploaded to YouTube, and then I pull the audio off and put it into an actual podcast.
Wonderful.
So there's, between the Facebook page, YouTube, or the podcast, however people want to listen to it, they should be able to find you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Wendy. Wow, we made the time go. Whoop.
I know, right? I'm looking at the clock going, oh my gosh, it's already 45 minutes. I could seriously just sit here and talk to you for hours. This is great.
Oh, fun. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for joining me. And I'm so glad you were so willing to reschedule and accommodate my migraine for Monday. I very much
appreciate it. That's terrible. I've had them and they're not fun.
Yeah, no, and I'm feeling much better and stuff too. So yeah, no, this was great. I'm really looking forward to the feedback that we'll get. I know it's a weird time of day, so people aren't jumping out at the moment, but we always get lots of views afterwards. So thank you again. And we'll be back here next Monday at 11 a.m.
All
Bye,
right.
everybody.
Bye.